know, I was just a skinny little kid. I was 14 years old, and I used to eat all kinds of junk food because I wanted to gain weight. But I asked my junior high school coach, what is the best way to gain weight? Is it to eat all this junk food? He goes, oh, no, no, no. He says, what you got to do is put on muscle. You don't want to put on fat weight. He says, you need to lift weights. And I said, well, I thought that exercising was for losing weight. He says, oh, well, if you do cardio, maybe yes, but if you do lifting of weights, you can actually build your muscles. So I thought, okay, so there's a gym in town. There's a local gym in town. I was 14 years old. I went there, and I spoke to the owner. His name was Bill Pearl. Little did I know that he was a four-time Mr. Universe winner. I would find that out later. But at the time, I said, hey, I'd like to work out here. He says, how old are you? I said, 14 years old. He says, hey, can you come back when you're 15? That's our starting point. I said, sure. So I went home, and I asked my mom if she would buy me a weight training set for the house. So I got these plastic cement-filled barbell plates and a bench, and I kind of started at home. But when I was 15, I went back to that gym, and I spoke with Mr. Pearl, and by now, I knew who he was because I had read the magazines, and I was so impressed that I was talking to a Mr. Universe, four-time Mr. Universe winner. And so I said, listen, I don't have enough money to join this gym, but I would like to do janitorial work for you in exchange for membership. And he said, sure, why don't you come in here every Saturday, scrub the shower, sweep the parking lot, polish the chrome machines, I'll pay you, and it'll earn your week's membership in advance. Bingo. Wow, so I'm here in Pasadena, my hometown, where it all began, where my weightlifting, my bodybuilding career started. I'm standing in front of what used to be Bill Pearl's gym. And what you see here, some of you who remember those days, was Maldonado's restaurant. That was a very, very high-end restaurant. Right up here on this ledge, used to sit a fiddler, a violin player, who would literally serenade all the restaurant goers who would park in the parking lot here of Maldonado's restaurant and walk down the sidewalk while the fiddler played music as you went to your dinner. If you were lucky enough to afford dinner at Maldonado's, you would be treated to silver domed dishes where they would literally lift up the dome before. It was one of the classiest places you could ever have dinner at. And right next door was Bill Pearl's gym. I'm going to stand right here, which is pretty much, I think, pretty much the place where I have that picture taken with Bill Pearl when I was 16 years old. The picture was taken by a photographer for New West magazine. It was for an article about California's new child play, teenage bodybuilding. And Bill Pearl was my mentor, and I was obviously in very good hands. It's so sad to see it not still be here, or at least not as it was. I remember when it closed, when Bill Pearl's gym, Bill Pearl had sold it to a man named Brian Henry, and Brian pretty much ran it into the ground, and about a year later it was out of business and closing. And I was driving by and I saw that the sign had been taken down and the door was open, and so I walked in and I just saw everything had been gutted. There was no mirrors on the walls, there was no drinking fountain, but the frame of where the drinking fountain was still there on the wall. And you know, the stucco from where the mirrors were taped to the walls was still there, and obviously the room had was still intact. It's just that all the equipment was gone, the mirrors were gone. And I remember crying. I remember just like losing a loved one, like losing a relative. It was so symbolic for me because so much of my life really started then. It started there in those walls. It was like a companion. It was, I'm a little less emotional about it now than I was then, because then it was still pretty much intact. Now it's very changed, but it is beautiful still. Not sad, but beautiful to be here in front of the place where it all started. This is the church where my mother's memorial service was. This is the church where I was an altar boy, a choir boy, and that over there was the playground. Again, as you could tell, guess kids don't play anymore. Now it's all parking, parking, parking. But this was my grade school. This was years 1 through 8, formative years. I lived about 6, 8 blocks away, so it was easy. And then right across the street is Pasadena City College. That's where I went a couple of years to junior college. That's also changed dramatically. So yes, this is my hometown, and it's changed a lot, but it still brings back wonderful memories. I set my sights on the 1983 Mr. America competition. I was 23 years old, and I prepared. I did the best I could. Unfortunately, I got 5th place. Some people would be happy with that. I was a little disappointed, but I thought, hey, look, I really want to open a gym because I'm loving this. So I'm going to open this gym, and then once it gets up and running, I'm going to do the competition again. Opened the gym in 1984. 1986, I enter Mr. America. I take 1st place in my division. 2 weeks later, I enter Mr. Universe. 1st place in my division. Oh my God, I was just on fire. Clearly, this is a calling for me. I was genetically lucky, obviously, but I also loved it. I'm standing in front of the building that used to be Brignole Fitness, my gym, in Pasadena. And I'm standing across the street in the parking structure, probably on the 2nd floor, maybe 3rd floor, so I can kind of see the roof, and I'm looking down at it. And the front looks pretty much the same as it did. It's got the same structure. The windows look a little different, but it looks kind of the same. I opened it when I was 24 years old. I was dating a girl whose father was an entrepreneur, and so he kind of took me by the hand and taught me how to do a business plan, and I was up and running at the age of 24, and I ran the gym for a total of 11 years at this location for 8 years, and then at another location for another 3, a bigger location. We were able to expand it, but you know, it was a significant time in my life. It was significant for a lot of reasons. I won Mr. America and Mr. Universe training here at my gym. It was the beginning of the fitness industry boom. So personal training didn't even exist when I opened this in 1984. And it started to emerge as a business, as an industry, right around 1986, 87-ish. But the memories are fond. I'm glad I've moved past that because I don't think gym ownership is where I'd like to be today, but I think it was a critically important time in my life for establishing my knowledge of the industry and my identity within the industry. There were a lot of fun memories and a lot of fun times. One time, Sean Ray, and many people know Sean Ray, he's very well known in not only in the bodybuilding world, but just even in the sports world. Fantastic bodybuilder, fantastic personality. He was producing a video called Lifestyles of the Fit and Famous. And I guess he decided to include me in that Fit and Famous group. And he came here and with his camera crew, and he walked through the door, and of course I was surprised to see him. It was an anniversary party we were having. So that's why when you see this footage, you'll see that, you know, it's festive. It's not what you'd expect to see in a day-to-day gym. But, you know, it was great and an honor to have him come and visit us and to include us in the production. And then we went in the back and did some dancing.
Where we've got a DJ playing simultaneously in the aerobic room. 5-piece band is playing here in the weight room. We've got our no-host bar here. We've got it fully catered by a company called Castle Catering, doing a fabulous job. We've got the USC Trojan Marching Band doing the opening number for us. We've got about 1,000 guests. We're having a great time.
When I first opened up here, Life Cycle had just been invented. So we had 5, which of course is a very small number compared to, but we were the first to have cardio equipment. And then we had 2 treadmills. Imagine just 2, that's all we had room for. And little by little, as cardio became more popular, and gyms were gravitating toward places that had huge areas of treadmills and cardio and elliptical machines and Versa climbers and all this, stair climbers, it became necessary for us to move into a bigger building, and we moved about 2 miles from here into a building that was twice the square footage. This is 10,400. That was 25,000 square feet with its own parking lot. But by that time, the gym industry had changed so much. There were so many gyms that were chain gyms, corporate gyms with multiple locations, that this type of gym, a boutique type of gym, just was not economically feasible anymore. Just you couldn't sustain it. And so I had to bow out. You know, I had this gym, Brignole Fitness, between 1984 and 1995, 11 years. And there was so many gyms in Pasadena at that time, I just couldn't keep my head above water. I was forced to close it. And so for the next 10 years, I just did personal training. Now the advantage of that, of course, was I didn't have all this overhead. But the disadvantage was that I just didn't think that I was doing the best and the most that I could do in the industry. And I realized that the people that were really sort of making the money, unfortunately, in the fitness business, are the people that were either completely lacking in knowledge, or the people who were just downright lying and selling pie-in-the-sky ideas about these gadgets, infomercials that would make you into Superman overnight. And so I thought, you know what, maybe I just need to change industries. So I took a job in Nicaragua exporting lumber. Complete departure from fitness. And I did that for 2 years, and it was a fascinating adventure. I learned a lot about the industry, import, export, etc. But ultimately it failed, but it was a good opportunity for me to just clear my head and realize what my calling truly was. And that was to come back to California and start fresh, educating the public on what is right and what is wrong in fitness. So I came back and I started writing articles for Ironman magazine. And the more that I wrote, the more feedback that I got, and the more I realized that there really was a place for me to actually write a full-scale book. And all the information I'd accumulated over the previous 30 years was just mountainous. But it is a brand new version of the thing that we all thought was fitness before. It is a complete reinterpretation of the game. Once you understand how mechanics of the body actually works, it's like the light bulb goes off and you think to yourself, holy cow, how could we have gotten it wrong for so many years? So here I was with all this knowledge. I was about, I would say, late 30s, and I'd become a name. I'd become a name right alongside Frank Zane, right alongside Bill Pearl, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, these guys were pro bodybuilders, but my name was being spoken in the same context as these wonderful golden era bodybuilders. But I had a different way of training. And so I thought, I'm gonna write a book, I'm gonna put all of this together. And so I found a publisher, and I spent 7 years writing the Physics of Fitness, which was later renamed the Physics of Resistance Exercise. But I published the book, and little by little I started sending it out, and then Mo Larby found my book, ordered it, read it, and it's one of the best finds I've ever had. I became fascinated with the mechanics, the biomechanics, how these levers work. So I started studying biomechanics, anatomy, physics, reading the university books, going to cadaver dissections. I just couldn't get enough of it. But in the process, I discovered that all those traditional exercises, bench press, squat, upright rows, overhead presses, parallel bar dips, they were not nearly as good as they could be. They were really inefficient. Now that I understood the physics, now that I understood the anatomy and the biomechanics and the neurology, I kept it to myself because I didn't want anyone to know about it. I wanted to have the advantage. So I thought, well, it's going to improve my training, but that's it. But years later, after winning a number of other competitions, I realized that I should put this together in book form. And so I came up with what I thought were the rules, the principles, what it is that determines what an exercise makes an exercise good and what makes an exercise not so good or compromise. And I came up with the 16 principles of biomechanics. Never been done before. No one had ever delineated what the rules were. Just like, you know, if you're going to build an airplane, you want the principles of aviation. Well, likewise, if you're going to build a body, you need the principles of biomechanics. No one had done this before, to my surprise. So next thing I know, I've started a whole new way of exercising. So every single muscle in our body has one precise anatomical motion that is best. And there is one precise direction of resistance for each one of those muscles that is best, which means that something that is different could be second best, third best, farther and farther and farther from ideal. And this is what has been happening in resistance exercise for the last century. People doing exercises that are third best, eighth best, seventh best, just a mishmash. It's almost like putting a bucket out in the rain and expecting to fill it, and you do fill it. But so much rain falls outside the bucket. That's what traditional bodybuilding and traditional muscle building has been like. People spending a lot of energy with some of that energy being used productively, but a lot of it being wasted and a lot of it being injurious.
So here now we're looking at a preacher dumbbell curl. And what you're noticing here is, in fact, I'm gonna relieve him just a little bit. In this position right here, his bicep is pulling on his forearm almost parallel to his bone. And at the same time, he has a significant angle of his forearm relative to the direction of gravity. That's two magnifiers happening at the same time. That could rupture this bicep tendon if this weight was heavy enough. Now, as he pulls back up again, his forearm ends up vertical, which means neutral. It's a neutral lever. The bicep has no load at the top. So you would have to ask yourself, why would I do an exercise that gives me too much load at the bottom, zero load at the top, if you're not gonna be able to change the shape of your bicep, and you can't, right? This is nothing but compromise. No advantage whatsoever.
Part of the mistake that has been traditionally made is this idea that you have to lift heavy weight. Heavy squats, heavy deadlift, heavy bench presses, heavy overhead presses. But when you understand physics, you realize that the muscle is not lifting the weight. The muscle is lifting the lever, the limb that is lifting the weight. And so we're talking about physics, we're talking about ratios and percentages. Look, if you have a muscle that's loaded with 90 pounds of resistance, that 90 pounds could be 90% of 100 pounds, or it could be 30% of 300 pounds. Either way, it's 90 pounds. The muscle doesn't know or care how you get it, but the skeleton does. It is a waste of effort, and it's a damaging thing to the skeleton to use the 300 pounds to load 90 pounds of muscle resistance when you can do it just as easily with 100 pounds more wisely.
You know, the approach that I teach is based on physics. It's based on understanding that when you lift weights, the limbs that are lifting that weight are interacting with gravity at a certain angle. And that determines how much load, how much percentage of load that muscle is going to get. And some people, they try to poo-poo that, and they try to say, oh, Doug Brignole's trying to reinvent the wheel. No, the wheel is muscle load. The wheel isn't how you get muscle load. The wheel is muscle load. We all agree that more muscle load equals more muscle growth. What people don't understand is that you can get more muscle load using less weight with better physics. So for example, let's just say you're going to do a barbell squat, and you're going to descend up and down, and your lower leg is only going to go 30 degrees from this neutral vertical position. Well, 100% would be this. Neutral is this. You're going 30 degrees with this lower leg. That's only loading your quadricep with only 30% of the load. So if you're a 200-pound guy with a 200-pound barbell on your back, you will get about 925 pounds of load on each of your quadriceps. But you think you're working hard because you have a 200-pound bar on your back. But if you were to do a sissy squat where you allow that lower leg to get horizontal, you're getting 100% of your own body weight. Well, 200 pounds with a perfectly horizontal lower leg will load each of your quadriceps with about 1,250 pounds. More load on your quadriceps than you were getting with a 200-pound barbell squat. So we are talking about more load. Now you might feel guilty because you don't have a 200-pound bar on your back and you don't feel or look like you're in beast mode, but that is irrelevant. What matters is how much your quadricep is getting. That's what it's all about.
Look, these guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mike Menser, all these guys that build these magnificent physiques, you might say to yourself, they did bench presses, they did squats, they did. Well, yes, I'm not saying that those things don't build muscle. What I'm saying is there is a smarter, wiser way to load the muscle without using those injurious exercises. That's what it's all about. It's about efficiency. It's about what's better than what. This program will deliver the best results that can possibly be delivered without having to use the heavy weights and without having all the damage that's done to the skeleton, spine, and shoulder joints.
We know it as a skull crusher. It's a supine dumbbell tricep extension. And what makes this a good exercise is the fact that right there, his forearm gets horizontal, perpendicular to gravity. Whenever a lever, a limb, is perpendicular to gravity, it has the biggest moment arm, distance between the pivot and the weight, it loads the muscle the most. And you'll notice that that happens when his arm is at 90 degrees, his elbow is at 90 degrees, and that's when the tricep is elongated. When he extends up, the muscle shortens, loses strength, and the resistance diminishes. So this is called early phase loading. It's loading the tricep in the early part of the range of motion and diminishing the resistance toward the end of the range of motion, and that's ideal. Now we're going to evaluate the parallel bar dips as a tricep exercise, and you'll notice that the forearm is mostly parallel with gravity. It's mostly vertical. That means the moment arm is just that wide right there. You're getting a bigger moment arm here, but this bone is being operated by the front deltoid and a little bit by the chest, not by the tricep. So as a tricep exercise, this is much inferior to that skull crusher we just showed you.
I competed for the Mr. Universe competition and won first place, not only in my age division at the age of 59, but also the overall, even beating the younger guys, doing 20 exercises that are very, very precise and efficient that don't include bent over barbell rows, upright rows, overhead presses, barbell squats, deadlifts, none of those. 20 exercises for the last 4 years got me exactly where I wanted to get without damaging my spine, without damaging my shoulder joints. It is truly the best way to train.
It's important to understand what I mean by the Brig 20. What are the Brig 20 and who are they for? And what I would say is the Brig 20 are the best anatomical motions for resistance exercise. You can apply that to bodybuilding. You can apply that to powerlifting. You can apply that to training for football. You can apply it to your 10-year-old boy's PE class. In other words, a safe motion is a safe motion. A productive motion is a productive motion. It's good for everyone to know what constitutes the safest shoulder motion, the safest chest motion, the safest lat motion. It's good for everyone to know what that is. And then if you want to go to the gym and do other things, or maybe you don't have a gym, or maybe you don't have the things that the Brig 20 require, then at least you know that you can get as close to that as possible, because the shoulder joint is supposed to do this, because the hip joint is supposed to do that, the knee joint is supposed to. So yes, you can always supplement, right? And you can use different levels of intensity. You can do it as a fitness thing. You could do it as a muscle building thing. You could do it as a competitive bodybuilding thing. You could use it to supplement your powerlifting. All of this information is just basically sensible science biomechanics.
Oh, did you see the message I sent you? Avanzo from Italy?
Was it on email?
No, a text message.
Oh no, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, he said that he won multiple bodybuilding contests using the Brignole method.
Well, that's not surprising to me. I mean, I did it myself. But
Yeah.
it's good to know other people are doing it.
He also learned English watching the videos.
Did he really?
Yeah. The community is really growing, and it's really a fitness revolution.
You know, it really is exciting to see people understanding that you can do more with less by using exercises that are more precise,
Right.
more efficient.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about, lifting heavy and doing compound movements and breaking your back. that you can actually load the muscle more with less resistance and less joint strain, and still compete at high-level competitions.
Yeah, many people are skeptical, right? To change from compound to do
Right.
isolation.
Well-
Can you really build a world-class physique with those exercises?
Well, I have to tell you, I would probably, if I didn't know better, because I've studied it, if I didn't know better, I would say that it's difficult to understand, to wrap your head around all of these exercises that we've been told are so important and are so necessary, and in fact, they're not at all. But, we're talking 100 years of people preaching that, so
Right.
it's just hard to imagine that all of a sudden someone says that they're actually not, and you can measure and quantify and realize exactly how much load they produce versus a more targeted exercise.
Yeah, I think when people see the comments on the YouTube channel and the Facebook group, and see like how people really change the way they work out and the type of results they are getting, that's when they will believe.
Yeah, it's in part they have to try it. They have to feel the difference. Also, I think what's going to happen inevitably is there are going to be more and more people winning bodybuilding contests and developing wonderful physiques,
Right.
and talking about how much better this system of training is. I mean, there's a thing called the 100 monkey experiment, where they showed that people start following the majority of people. So if you have 20 or 30 people out of 100 doing something, then for the most part, people just sort of ignore it. But when it gets to like 50, 60, 70% of the people, then people start following along, which sort of suggests, by the way, that people are oftentimes more influenced by what others are doing than by what they intellectualize, what they read, and what they understand. But whatever it takes to get people to understand there is, in fact, a better way to exercise, it's fine with me.
Right, same here.
So we're going to my friend's gym, my friend's garage, I should say. He developed a wonderful gym. We did it sort of together. And we did this because the pandemic forced the commercial gyms to close, and we had gone 3 months without working out, and we were just hating it. And so then we just decided to convert his garage into an exercise area. And so we bought a couple of machines, we bought a few benches, we bought some dumbbells, and now that the gyms are reopened, we don't want to go back because everything we do here, we do better than we were doing it at the commercial gym, without the hassle of checking in and parking your car and driving there and paying for parking and of course paying for membership and everything else. This is way, way better. I think everybody would enjoy, if they could, their own private gym,
Right.
which does not require more space than the size of a garage.
Yeah. It's hard to believe for some people to drop all the machines that they see in the gyms and focus on only a few to get a world-class physique.
Right. Well, for example, leg extensions. We do that with a cable, right? And of course, the cable machine does a lot of other things too. We do 12 different exercises on that machine. So it doesn't take up any more space. We just need a, kind of an elevated bench to do cable leg extensions.
Special setup.
If I didn't have to do this because of the pandemic, I would never have discovered
Right.
that I can get a better quad workout with cable leg extensions than I could with a leg extension machine.
And that's what you did also when you won the Mr. Universe for a second time.
Yeah, I trained using 20 super efficient exercises to win Mr. Universe at the age of 59. And most people would just naturally assume that I had done bent over barbell rows and deadlifts and T-bar rows and overhead presses and upright rows and barbell squats. And nope, I didn't do any of those.
What do you think if someone start these exercises early, let's say at 20?
Oh, it's the best. See, here's the thing is for people that have injured themselves, they know firsthand that conventional weight training, compound movements, heavy compound movements are destructive to their joints. They know that, they've experienced it. They are more likely to be receptive in the beginning, primarily by default, because they can't do the compound movements anymore. Their shoulders hurt, their backs hurt, etc. They do this and they go, wow, I wish I discovered this all along. What's important to know is that when you're young and you're not yet beat up, the idea that you can use these exercises more for their benefit than to avoid the injury risk. That's a little harder challenge, but that is still a fact. You can't actually get more benefit with these exercises in addition to the reduction of injury risk. But kids don't care. Kids don't care. They think they're Superman, and they don't. But trust me, speaking from experience, those of us who abused our bodies when you were younger, you got away with it for a while. You thought you were great for a while. You had bragging rights for a while about how much you lifted, which is, by the way, is entirely irrelevant later. You later end up regretting. I think you know that I asked Rick Drayson if you had the option of having a perfectly intact body, no shoulder pain, no back pain, but you had no memory of ever having done these heavy lifts, would you take that option? And he said, yes, of course I would take that option if I had it, but I don't. It's too late now.
You know, people see famous bodybuilders lifting heavy weights, veins are popping, you know, doing maximum effort. They think that that's what is needed to get maximum muscle growth.
Right. Well, there's two things. Well, there's several psychological things, but two primary things that are happening psychologically. One is the mistaken belief that the amount of weight you're lifting is exclusively and directly related to how much muscle load you're getting, and it's not. The amount of weight you're lifting is altered by the physics of your bones, your limbs, your levers, the angles, the lengths, and things like that. So, number one, you can actually load a muscle with 90 pounds of resistance using 300 pounds, 30% of 300, or you can load that muscle with 90 pounds of resistance with a more efficient exercise as 90% of 100. So 90 pounds is all the muscle cares about. It's going to respond to the load. It's not going to respond to the to how much weight you're actually using, but your skeleton is going to pay a price for it. I'm going to pull away from the wall over here so you can get out.
So, you know, some people ask me if I'm old school or if I'm new school, and it's like, look, you have to understand, you can't make the generalization that everything that's old is good or bad, or everything that's new is good or bad, but I will say this. I started in the 70s. That was old school. That's all we knew. That's all I knew. I did behind the neck presses. I did heavy barbell squats. I did deadlift. I herniated a disc. I damaged my left shoulder joint. I learned through experience that those exercises are damaging. And the whole time I was thinking to myself, do these things go hand in hand? Do I have to damage my body, my shoulder joint, my spine in order to? No, you don't. There's a better way to train that doesn't jeopardize your spine and doesn't jeopardize your shoulder joints, because in fact, when you train in the most efficient way possible, every muscle that works best works in a way that is safest for the joint. That's the beauty of bodybuilding, is that you don't have to do anything unnatural to build your muscles. Right? There could be one lazy guy that's doing nothing, right? And there could also be that everybody is putting in the same amount of effort, but they have different strength capacities. And so they go, how much you bench? Well, I would like to say, how strong are your pecs as measured with an equal pectoral exercise? But we don't do that. And so that's the mistake. In my book, I talk about literally the history, the evolution of bodybuilding, and how it started from circus acts, then it went to strength man exhibitions, then it went to powerlifting, and then it went to bodybuilding. In fact, the early publications, what they call the physical culture magazines, were strength and health. Strength and health. The one cover that in little tiny cursive letter it says bodybuilding forearm in the back. It's like shh, because it was considered vain to care about how you look. But the fact is, you cannot build a muscle without challenging a muscle, and if you challenge a muscle, the muscle gets stronger. It's not just a cosmetic thing, right? Muscles get bigger when they get stronger because you load them and you work them under load. So it's sort of like semantics. It's like when people think they've gotten stronger because they're moving more weight in a squat. Okay, so each of the participating muscles have gotten stronger, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't have done the same thing with isolation exercises. The problem is that people typically do isolation exercises for high reps and low weight because they think they're shaping exercises. And they do the powerlifting exercise for heavy weight, low reps. So they become strengthening by default. But it's not the exercise that's doing it, it's the fact that you're applying it differently. You're applying heavy weight, low reps. If you did 4 reps of tricep extensions or 4 reps of side raise
or 4 reps of leg extension, you'd get the same strength increase. And I would say that's a great strategy if you're a powerlifter. If your goal is to compete and you're going for a trophy and you're comparing your squat or your deadlift or whatever with someone else's squat or deadlift, then these are good strategies for increasing those power lifts, yes. The problem is that people are doing power lifts and they're not competing. And they're doing power lifts for the wrong reason. If you're just doing a deadlift and you're never planning on competing, then you're taking the risk on tearing the bicep of the hand that's palm forward, because people tend to sort of want to curl with that arm. And that's how biceps snap. You ask yourself, how do my triceps feel? Am I losing size in my tricep? Am I losing strength in my tricep? And so I weaned myself because I was afraid to let go, and then what do you know? My back is just as good, just as big, just as strong as it was before, if not more so, and I don't have the rear deltoid pain. People love that, and they love it because, quote unquote, it's an old school exercise. People love the idea of old school, quote unquote, basic, military. They love that idea. It's very masculine.
You know, the first time that I did a low pulley row, I was a teenager, so I was at Bill Pearl's gym. And I was pulling on this thing, and I thought to myself, you know, I'm not actually feeling this where I think I'm supposed to be feeling this. I'm supposed to be feeling this sort of in my upper back, but I'm not. I'm sort of feeling it in my lower back and sort of in my deltoids, my rear deltoids. The fact is, physics proves that. That's exactly where you're going to get it, because physics dictates where the load goes, not what your wishful thinking is.
Here's the thing is, there's a thing called opposite position loading, or it could also be called a line of force. So the resistance is going in a 12 o'clock direction. Whatever's at the 6 o'clock direction, opposite the forward pull, will be most loaded, and that's going to be his rear deltoids and also his lower back. If you're trying to get the trapezius or the lats, and the origins of those muscles are on the spine, then this resistance will have to go around the corner. So you're better off getting a resistance that goes this way and this way for either the lats or for the middle trapezius. But having a forward direction of resistance is the wrong, or less than ideal, direction of resistance if you're trying to target the back muscles.
Most machines in gyms are not made correctly. Once you understand the physics, once you understand the neurology, once you understand ideal anatomical motion, you realize that machines are not made on the basis of what is correct for the body. They're made on the basis of commercialization. They're made on the basis of what sells. And this is completely wrong. I mean, this will lead us in a completely different direction. In fact, the fitness industry has been drastically over-commercialized. And trend after trend after trend has come about because the magazines and the associations are trying to keep their revenues going. And as a result of that, trainers are following what the associations are telling them to do instead of what is actually correct in terms of physics, in terms of biomechanics, in terms of anatomical motion. So we need to reinvent this industry. This industry is misguided, going in the wrong direction. We need to make this a legitimate industry where it is based entirely on science, physics, biomechanics, and neurology. We have so much more that we can do for the fitness industry to make it a better industry, a safer industry, a more effective and productive industry. My associate Mo Larby and I are determined to teach the world this better approach to fitness. It truly is the best way to train. We can show you why those other exercises should be obsolete and eventually will be obsolete. This will be the revolutionary new way of training because it is just by far more logical, more practical, more efficient, and more productive.
We live in a time right now where social media is just dominating, and everyone is being brainwashed by influencers and people with good physiques, and in fact, most of the time, these people are telling you they're doing something they don't actually do or taking supplements they don't actually take. The bottom line is that you have to think for yourself. Look, I don't care, I really don't care if this thing that I teach becomes popular or not. I'm not trying to be commercial in this. I'm not trying to capitalize on this thing. I just think it's absolutely fascinating, absolutely provable, absolutely quantifiable For those people that are smart enough to experiment with it and try it, the people who have already tried it have said it feels better, it produces better results. We've had some guys that are in their 50s and 60s who used to compete, who've now returned to bodybuilding competition because they've discovered they can train again. They can train productively again, right? So, look, if it works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't care either way. It's not, for me, it's not about being popular. It's all about just delivering truth.
You know, there's a lot of advertising, there's a lot of marketing out there for courses that will build muscle, that will improve the physique. Some of these courses are promoted, endorsed by a Mr. Olympia winner, a big bodybuilder. And it would seem luring to you. It would seem convincing to you that this is the way to learn how to train right. But I have to tell you that there's a lot more to training right than just the conventional wisdom, the traditional exercises, which were performed by a Mr. Olympia guy who had great genetics and took large amounts of supplements, and now creates the illusion that he understands exercise science. No, biomechanics is a science all its own. It involves the knowledge of physics. And these guys don't know physics. These guys don't know levers. These guys don't know neurology. And so before you jump into a course, just ask yourself the simple question: how educated is this person? How knowledgeable is this person? Does his course involve conversation about biomechanics, levers, percentages of load, isolation, etc.? That is what it's all about, and anything else is just pie in the sky fantasy. You know, there's an interesting thing that happens almost every time when new people, newbies, start to work out. And that is they go to the gym with the intention of building their body up, building their muscles. And there they meet a couple of guys, they become friends with them, and pretty soon it becomes kind of a ritual. Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're in there and you're squatting, you're deadlifting, you're overhead pressing. And all of a sudden what ends up happening is you lose sight of the primary goal you had in the beginning, which was to build your muscles. Instead, you end up now with the focus of trying to keep up with your buddies. Who's gonna squat more? Who's gonna do more chin-ups? Who's gonna do more deadlift or more overhead press? And I can tell you this for a fact: you can build more muscle with certain exercises that require less weight than you can with other exercises that allow you to use a heavier weight, but load your muscles less and build your muscles less. So don't get caught up in this idea of trying to outdo your buddies. It doesn't matter how much you deadlift, it doesn't matter how much you squat, it doesn't matter how many pull-ups you can do. Those are arbitrary things. Your goal originally was to build your muscles. And there's better, wiser ways of doing that than trying to lift a heavier weight than your buddies. You know, biomechanically correct movement, anatomical movement that is ideal, is the same for everyone. All elbows bend the same. Whether you're a basketball player, or you're a wrestler, or you're a boxer, or you're a bodybuilder, whatever it is that you do, your elbow's gonna bend the same, your shoulder's gonna move the same way, your knees are gonna move the same way, it's all the same. So it's important to understand what constitutes an ideal exercise for anyone. So the idea that someone's gonna say, well, this is a good exercise if this is the sport you do, right? Everyone has to have basic anatomical movement. This program, the things that I teach, will strengthen your entire body, and then you can apply that strength to whatever sport or activity you do. Now, there will be people out there that will try to say, no, you've got to do the traditional stuff. Look, what I suggest to you is use your logic. Listen to what we're saying. Ask yourself if it makes sense. Ask the important questions. Listen to the logical answers. Compare with other programs if you like. I'm not saying to you, don't do this, don't do that. I'm saying try ours and compare it. And you will see, you will feel that it just makes more sense. It just works better. What does that mean? It means that you will build your muscles better with less wasted effort, less risk of injury, less wear and tear on your joints. It's not a matter of working as hard as you possibly can. It's a matter of loading that muscle as best you can, as efficiently as you can, with the least amount of wear and tear. It's like the difference between having a wheel that has ball bearings and one that doesn't. It's about wear and tear. It's about friction. It's about trying to get to your goal without being beat up in the process. That's what it's about, and there's a logical, sensible way to do that, and that's what we teach. I started working out when I was 14 years old, and I'm 61 years old now. That's a long time to be working out, and I can tell you this for a fact. I wish I knew then what I know now. I wish I would have used the concepts that I teach now then. They weren't available then. No one was teaching it. Do yourself a favor. If I could do myself this favor all over again, I would do it. Learn biomechanics. Learn the physics of resistance exercise. Understand that the muscle load you get is directly related to the angle of the limb that's lifting that weight. It is not just the amount of weight. Do yourself a favor, learn biomechanics. It'll be the smartest move you ever made in terms of working out with resistance.